Thanksgiving. It's a time for family, gratitude, and let's be honest, way too much food. The smell of turkey roasting, the sound of relatives catching up, the warmth of a home filled with love. It's the perfect picture of holiday cheer. But what happens when that picture gets twisted? When the warmth turns cold, and the familiar faces around the dinner table start to look like strangers? What if the biggest threat isn't burnt stuffing, but something far more sinister lurking just outside the frosted window pane? Or even worse, sitting right next to you. Tonight, we recarving into 3 true stories that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this wholesome holiday. These aren't tales of haunted houses or shadowy monsters. They're real-life Thanksgiving nightmares that actually happen to people just like you and me. So pull your chair a little closer to the fire, and let's begin. Our first story comes from a woman named Chloe, who was spending Thanksgiving with her new boyfriend, Mark, and his family for the very first time. She was nervous, of course, wanting to make a good impression. Mark's family lived in a beautiful, sprawling farmhouse in rural Vermont, miles from the nearest town. It was the quintessential idyllic setting. His parents were welcoming, his siblings were friendly, and the house was filled with the delicious aroma of a home-cooked feast. As the afternoon wore on, everyone was laughing and sharing stories. Chloe started to relax, feeling like she was truly becoming part of the family. After dinner, as darkness fell outside, Mark's father suggested they play a family tradition, a game of hide-and-seek on their massive property. Chloe thought it was a bit childish, but everyone was so enthusiastic she couldn't say no. The rule was simple. One person counts to 100 on the porch while everyone else hides. Mark's younger sister was it. Well, Chloe, wanting to find a really good spot, ventured away from the house, past the old barn, and towards the dense woods that bordered the property. She found a hollowed-out log and squeezed inside, convinced she'd never be found. Minutes turned into what felt like an hour. The woods grew silent. The cheerful shouts from the game long gone. It was pitch black now, and a chilling wind began to blow. A little creeped out, Chloe decided the game must be over. She crawled out of the log and started walking back towards the warm, glowing lights of the farmhouse. But as she got closer, she noticed something was wrong. The lights were off. The entire house was dark, thinking it was part of the game, a prank. She called out Mark's name. Silence. She called out for his parents. More silence. Her heart started to pound. She ran to the front door and found it locked. She peered through the windows, but the house was empty. The cars were all gone from the driveway. It was as if the entire family, the entire Thanksgiving celebration, had simply vanished. Panicked and freezing with no cell service, Chloe started walking down the long, dark driveway towards the main road, praying a car would pass.
Aft.
After what felt like an eternity, headlights appeared in the distance. A police cruiser. The officer who picked her up looked at her, bewildered. He told her that no one had lived in that farmhouse for over 20 years. Not since the original family who owned it disappeared without a trace, on Thanksgiving night. Our next story is from a man named David, who was a college student at the time. To save money, he decided not to fly home for Thanksgiving, and instead stay in his nearly empty dorm building. Only a handful of other students were still around, including a quiet, reclusive guy from down the hall named Alex. On Thanksgiving Day, feeling a bit lonely, David was surprised when Alex knocked on his door. He was holding a small, homemade pumpkin pie and asked if David wanted to share it. David was touched by the gesture. The two of them sat in David's room, making small talk while they ate the pie. It was surprisingly good. Alex wasn't very talkative, but he seemed nice enough. After they finished, Alex thanked him and went back to his room. About an hour later, David started to feel strange. Not sick, but woozy and disoriented. The walls of his room seemed to be breathing, and the colors were unnaturally bright. He felt a wave of intense paranoia wash over him. He realized with dawning horror that the pie must have been laced with something. He stumbled to his door and locked it, his heart hammering against his ribs. He could hear shuffling outside his door. It was Alex. He started whispering David's name, his voice sounding distorted and menacing. Then, he started jiggling the doorknob, over and over again. David huddled in the corner of his room, terrified, as Alex continued to whisper and test the door for hours. The hallucinations were overwhelming, and he couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. All he knew was the very real terror of being hunted by the person who had just shared a friendly holiday dessert with him. The ordeal only ended when the sun came up and campus security did their morning rounds. They found Alex passed out in the hallway, and David was finally safe. He never found out what Alex's true intentions were that night, but he never stayed on campus for a holiday ever again. For our final story, we go to a suburban neighborhood, much like any other. A family, the Millers, were hosting their annual Thanksgiving potluck. The whole neighborhood was invited. It was a loud, joyous affair with kids running around the yard and adults mingling in the house. One of the neighbors, a quiet, elderly man named Mr. Harrison, was famous for his turkey. Every year, he'd bring over a perfectly cooked, massive bird that was always the star of the show. This year was no different. He arrived with his turkey, everyone thanked him, and it was placed in the center of the buffet table. As people started eating, a few of them commented that the turkey tasted a little different this year. Gamey, some said, but no one thought much of it. Mr. Harrison just smiled his quiet smile and said it was an old family recipe. But the party continued late into the evening. The next day, however, several neighbors started calling each other. A family down the street, the Pattersons, hadn't been seen since the party. Their car was in the driveway, their lights were on, but no one was answering the door or their phones. This went on for 2 days. Police were finally called to do a wellness check. What they found inside the Patterson house was nothing. The family was gone. There were no signs of a struggle, nothing was stolen. They had simply vanished. The investigation stalled for weeks until one of the detectives on a hunch decided to talk to everyone who was at the potluck again. When he interviewed Mr. Harrison, he noticed a strange detail. In Mr. Harrison's garage, he saw an unusually large, industrial-grade meat grinder. And in his freezer, he found several large, unmarked packages wrapped in butcher paper. The detective's blood ran cold. Remembered the neighbor's comments about the gamey taste of the turkey. While they never found any definitive proof to charge him, the town was never the same. Mr. Harrison moved away shortly after. And no one in that neighborhood ever had a potluck Thanksgiving again. The scariest part is that these stories aren't just fiction. The reminders that sometimes the real horrors aren't ghosts or monsters, but the unsettling possibilities that hide in plain sight, even during our most cherished traditions. Thank you so much for joining me for these terrifying Thanksgiving tales. I hope they haven't completely ruined your appetite for the holidays. If you enjoyed this video and want more true scary stories, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. And hey, share this with a friend. You'll be seeing this Thanksgiving if you dare. Stay safe and thanks for watching.